YMT218 Object-Oriented Programming. This is the last chapter tutorial. So we will speak about GUI applications in Python, and we discussed the relevant theory about GUI, and I mentioned in the theory, if you remember, that we cannot cover everything, so we couldn't exactly cover everything in GUI, and I'll try my best to cover the most important topics in practical. I will record a number of sessions today, tomorrow I'll upload them, and no problem. I will just start with the basics so that you can catch the idea of how to create a GUI application. Let's go from the extreme basic, so that let's assume that you have no idea at all. I'm using Python shell, so I just created a new file, and I will write a simple GUI application to show you how we can create it. Now, for GUI applications, I said we have different modules that can be used. However, one of the very convenient modules available in Python itself, we don't need to install it, we don't need to import or add or whatever, manipulate our own Python in order for us to use it. So it's available, we can just import it. Import it for our program, not import it from an external source. All right, so in this case, what are we going to do? The first step is import initially tk-enter, and then we are going to use this tk-enter for creating GUI applications. I'll do the example twice in two different ways to show you how we usually code in Python. Now, we imported tk-enter. I have to create the root or the main or the window that we have we will use to put our components or widgets on. So I imported the module. Let's use this module to create a window to place our widgets. Widgets means the components, buttons, text fields, labels, etc. Okay. So I'll use my tk-enter, the one I imported, and I'll say create the main window or the root. Some people call it root, some call main, some call main window, some call window. So it's up to you to call it. I would prefer to go for window or sometimes root. Window is very suitable for me. You have the choice. It's up to you. You can choose the name that fits your perspective. Now, we created a window. This is just a window, plain window. Now, what I'm going to do, I'll just display this window and see how things go. Initially, in order for us to display this window, we need to enter this window into the main loop. Okay, so this is a method that I can call from this window as a component of tk-enter, and I requested to enter the main loop. Now I can execute and see what's the output. Let's just execute and see. Okay, now look, this is the output. Just a plain window with tk as default title. Okay. So, are we interested in this? No, it has no component. It's just GUI, plain GUI. We are not usually interested in just a plain view of this. And one more thing I have to say, I don't want to forget telling it. This has its own default length and width, or height and width, if you like to call it. Well, I think it's 100 times 100. You can check from the specifications of Python. So this is the default. We can stretch it out, but we can resize it from the program itself. So I can stretch it by myself, but instead of doing this, now let's do it from the program itself here. So we created a window. Let's do two things. Change its title, that title which was displayed on the bar tk, small letters. Now I will use window.title, and for this title I'll provide what I want as a title in this case. So it depends on what do you want to say or what do you want to give as a title, and it is a text, so remember to include it or encapsulate it between quotes or double quotes, triple quotes, whatever. So it's a string. I will call it GUI example 1. Okay, I'll keep it like this. That's better. So we have modified the title. Let's just run and see. Now look, we modified the title. The problem is it comes by default, so I have to stretch it out so that I can see the full title. Okay. This is changed. Good. Now, let's try to do another thing. Let me resize the window dot geometry, okay? And I'll place the dimensions. So I'll place these dimensions now. Here, the horizontal dimension, if you want to call it width, call it width. If you want to call it height, or this is not height. If you want to call it length, call it length. It's up to you. But this is the horizontal side. So the horizontal side, I would say 350, and 350 here refers to pixels. We don't say millimeters or centimeters. No, it's pixels. These are pixels, and the width here is considered or calculated by pixels. Let's just put also 350, and this is a small case x or lowercase x. It's just letter x but in lowercase. So let's run and see how things go. Now look, yeah, we resized it. So you can resize based on the customized need of your program. So some programs need actually bigger window, others need actually smaller window, and whatever, you can leave it as default. All right, so that is good for the window. Before we move to any other component, I'll show you how we can do it in another way. Now we imported tkinter. I'll change this import. Now it's extremely nice to use this way. From tkinter import all. This asterisk means import all, similar to the asterisk we were using in Java, if you remember. Okay, so now I have all classes of tkinter ready to use in this program. I will not write it again, so it will not be written again. So you can use any function or any method from tkinter without listing tkinter. It's already available as if it is a known package here. So in this case, we can rerun and see how things go. That's it. So you may say, okay, what did you say? What did you do? What's the benefit? Well, the benefit, now we are just using window. How about if we use like 10, 20 widgets? We don't have to repeat typing tkinter each time. In that case, it's much easier for us to write the function directly. For example, if you use button or if you use label, you don't have to type tkinter dot label dot button dot. You don't have to do that. That's much easier. Now let's try to use the object-oriented scenario. So what I'm going to do, I'll just keep this one the way it is. Okay, I'll try to create a class. So I'll define a class. So class, I'll call it GUI, maybe GUI1. Okay, and I will enter inside the class scope and define the initializer init. And in init, I will receive self, as we are used actually to do. And then I will call window, but remember, window itself is actually is an attribute of a class. So we need self to access to it. It's up to you to make it private, or if you want to keep it public like this, it's up to you. So I can make it private, however you need self to access to it. So in order for you to use it, then you have to use it this way. Okay, and the same goes to this. we are no longer using window by itself. We are using an attribute which called window. So we need self to access to it. Again, if you're going to use this one, you need to use self to access to it. The instance of my class. Now, in order for me to use this class, I have to instantiate it. I can create a main method outside of the class. Pay attention, outside of the class. And I can instantiate. So instantiate means what? Let's say GUI equals GUI1. And this is an instantiation of the class. Now, in order for me to check whether my program is working or not, I can call the main and run. That's it. So the first type I created without considering any classes, that was what we refer to by structured programming. It's not even modular. So we didn't consider any method other than just the methods that we access to them through tk-enter. I mean, we didn't create our own methods. We just used the ready methods to create just structured, that means a sequence of program steps. However, in this case here, what we did, let me just show you the same output actually, then let me terminate. What we did is creating a class. And in this class, what we did is we considered that this is an attribute. So if you want to create any other component or widget, we would consider it as an attribute. Most likely you can consider it as a private attribute if you don't want any external source to access to it or an external code to access to it. So in that case, once you're done with your definition here and coding or whatever, then you can create another class, or you can create another method to instantiate the class if it is needed, and then you call this method that will work for you as object-oriented, class-based objects and classes in this case. That's it for this session. I'll create another session. Until then, have a good time. Goodbye.